Have you ever been in a situation where someone insulted you, pushed your buttons, or tried to drag you into an argument, and your first instinct was to snap back? Most people react immediately, driven by emotion, anger, or ego. But the ancient Stoics, they did something different. They stayed silent first, not because they were weak, not because they didn't know what to say, but because they understood something most people never learn. The first reaction is usually the wrong one. Think about it. How many times have you said something in the heat of the moment, only to regret it later? How often has your quick response made a situation worse, not better? The Stoics knew that silence isn't a sign of submission, it's a sign of strength, a pause, a moment of stillness. When the world expects you to lose control, you choose calm. And in that moment, you hold power. In this video, we'll uncover why the greatest Stoic minds, like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, practiced this discipline of staying silent first. And by the end, you'll understand how this simple act can make you mentally stronger, wiser, and nearly untouchable in the chaos of life. So, let's begin now. You might wonder, why would the Stoics choose silence when their enemies insulted them, when crowds demanded a response, or when chaos surrounded them? The answer is simple, yet profound, because silence gives you space. Space to think, space to see things clearly, and most importantly, space to decide whether something even deserves a reaction at all. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, faced betrayal, false accusations, and public criticism more times than we can imagine. Yet he rarely responded in anger. In his private journals, which we now know as meditations, he reminded himself, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Imagine that for a moment. In a world where everyone rushes to comment, to argue, to take sides, Marcus taught himself to pause. To not immediately label something as good or bad, offensive or acceptable, because the moment you react without thinking, you give away your power. You let others dictate your emotions. And the Stoics refused to let that happen. Seneca, another great Stoic, once said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." He believed that time reveals truth, that what feels urgent in the heat of the moment often loses its importance once the fire cools. Have you ever noticed how an insult that stings today becomes meaningless by tomorrow? Or how a problem that seemed overwhelming this morning feels manageable after a quiet evening walk? That's the power of silence. It's not just the absence of words, it's the presence of control. When you stay silent first, you stop yourself from saying things you'll later regret. You prevent your enemies from using your words against you, and you allow your mind the clarity to respond not as a victim of emotion, but as a master of it. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of the most respected Stoic teachers, believed that we should guard our speech like a city under siege, because words, once spoken, cannot be taken back, and often, the damage they cause lasts far longer than the moment they were uttered. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, or life throws chaos your way, remember this: you don't owe anyone an immediate reaction. Your silence is not weakness. It's strategy. It's wisdom in motion. And in that pause, you hold the upper hand. But let's be clear. The Stoics didn't stay silent to avoid conflict or to appear indifferent. Their silence was a weapon, carefully wielded. In fact, in ancient times, silence was often more powerful than words. A measured pause could unnerve a rival more than 1,000 insults. An unspoken gaze could disarm a hostile crowd far quicker than any speech. The Stoics understood that when you react immediately, you often reveal too much: your fears, your insecurities, your triggers. And once your opponent knows where to impress, they'll never stop. So instead, the wise would wait. They would let the other person empty their fury, spill their frustration, reveal their own weaknesses, while they observed in silence. Like a still lake reflecting a stormy sky, the Stoic remains unmoved on the surface, watching the chaos rage and pass. And in that waiting, something remarkable happens. You realize that most insults lose their meaning when left unanswered. Most provocations fade when ignored. And most conflicts can be avoided when one side chooses not to fuel the fire. Marcus Aurelius wrote, To refrain from imitation is the best revenge. When someone tries to drag you down into petty quarrels, the most powerful thing you can do is not join them. Silence becomes a silent statement. I am not like you. This doesn't mean you never speak up. The Stoics weren't emotionless statues, nor did they tolerate injustice or cruelty, but they believed in choosing the right moment and the right words. When emotion had settled and wisdom could guide the tongue, because every word carries weight, and once spoken, it cannot be taken back. Have you ever regretted speaking too soon? Have you wished, after a heated conversation, that you'd just waited a little longer? Thought a little deeper before answering? That's the wisdom the Stoics practiced, to let silence be their shield, and time be their ally. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to be a philosopher or an emperor to do this. Anyone, in any situation, can choose silence first. It's not about being passive. It's about taking control, about mastering yourself before you attempt to master any situation. And when you do, you'll find that people start reacting to you differently, with more caution, more respect, sometimes even with fear, because they sense you're no longer playing the same impulsive game. You've risen above it. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The Stoics didn't just stay silent to protect themselves. They stayed silent to protect their clarity, their ability to see things as they truly are. You see, when emotions flare up, your mind gets clouded. It's like muddy water. The more you stir it, the murkier it becomes. But if you leave it still, clarity returns. And that's exactly what silence does. It stops you from stirring the water. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to step back and observe things objectively, as if he were a stranger watching from a distance. Because when you detach yourself from the heat of the moment, you start to see what truly matters and what doesn't. Have you noticed how, in hindsight, most of the things you once lost sleep over turned out to be insignificant? The argument you had last week, the rude comment from a stranger, the mistake you made months ago, they fade, and silence allows you to recognize their insignificance much sooner. Seneca warned against letting anger speak for us. He wrote, "Anger is like a ruin, which breaks itself on what it falls." In other words, uncontrolled emotion doesn't just harm others. It shatters you first. By staying silent, you give yourself room to ask better questions. Is this really worth my energy? Will this matter tomorrow? Can anything good come from my reaction? And most times, the honest answer is no. The Stoics believe that between stimulus and response lies a space, and in that space is your power to choose, not your instinctive reaction, but your deliberate, reasoned response. It's like standing on a cliff, watching a storm rage below. You could jump into the chaos, or you could stay where you are, calm and untouchable. Epictetus taught his students to focus only on what they could control, their thoughts, their actions, their character, not the insults of others, not the circumstances they couldn't change, not the rumors or opinions of the crowd. And what's beautiful is that silence aligns perfectly with this philosophy, because silence is one of the few things you can always control. No one can force a word from your lips, and in that control, you claim a rare kind of freedom, a freedom from impulse, a freedom from the expectations of others, a freedom to decide who you'll be in every moment of your life. And isn't that what strength truly is? But here's the truth. Most people overlook. Silence isn't easy. It takes far more strength to stay quiet than to lash out. Anyone can throw insults. Anyone can react with anger, slam a door, fire off a quick reply. But to stand still, to hold your tongue when your pride screams for a response, that's discipline. And discipline is what separates those who control their fate from those who are forever at the mercy of others. Imagine a warrior standing calmly in the middle of a battlefield, while arrows and curses fly around him. That's what a Stoic practices every day, not just with enemies or public humiliation, but with small, ordinary irritations. A rude driver, an ungrateful friend, a mistake at work, even the voice in their own head whispering doubts. They don't react. They choose stillness first. Because every reaction is a transaction. You trade your peace of mind for a fleeting sense of satisfaction, and the Stoics understood this trade was rarely worth it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you are offended, At any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. It's a simple, humbling reminder. Most of what angers us and others is a reflection of something unresolved within ourselves. So instead of wasting energy on what you can't control, the Stoic turns inward. They observe their irritation like a doctor examines a patient with curiosity, not judgment. Why did that bother me? What fear, what pride, what expectation was just threatened? In this way, silence becomes more than a shield. It becomes a mirror, revealing your triggers, your attachments, your ego, and in time, what used to provoke you loses its grip. You grow harder to offend, slower to anger, quicker to forgive. That is the quiet strength the Stoics cultivated. Not loud victories, not dramatic confrontations, but the invisible, daily victories over themselves. Because in the end, the real battle is never out there. It's in here, in your mind, in your heart. And every moment you choose silence first, you win a little more of that battle. Now, you might be wondering if silence is so powerful. When is the right time to finally speak? The Stoics had a clear answer for that too. They believed you should only speak when your words can improve upon the silence. Seneca once wrote, "Speech in its essence should be rare and wise. Not every thought needs to be voiced. Not every disagreement requires a rebuttal. In fact, most of the time, what people crave isn't your opinion, it's your calm presence, the ability to stand steady while everyone else loses themselves in noise. And when you do decide to speak, your words carry more weight, because people know you don't speak often, and you don't speak carelessly. Your silence builds anticipation. Your restraint builds authority. It's like watching a quiet, steady stream. When it finally swells into a wave, everyone takes notice. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This simple filter kept him from wasting words on trivial matters, gossip, or emotional outbursts, and the result? He became unshakable, not because he controlled others, but because he mastered himself. There's a beautiful kind of strength in that. To walk through a storm without chasing every gust of wind, to stand in a room full of shouting voices, and let your silence speak louder than their noise. Have you ever met someone like that? The person who barely says a word, yet when they do, everyone listens. That's not luck. That's discipline. That's earned respect. And the best part is, you can cultivate this too. It starts with small moments. When you catch yourself about to respond impulsively, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? Does this deserve my peace? Most times it won't. The Stoics weren't perfect. They wrestled with their tempers, their egos, their doubts. But they believed in progress over perfection, in making better choices, one quiet moment at a time. And each time you choose silence first, you reclaim a piece of your strength, a strength that doesn't need to shout, a strength that speaks for itself. And perhaps the most beautiful lesson in all of this is that silence isn't emptiness. It's not a void, and it's not absence. In Stoic philosophy, silence is a living, breathing space where wisdom grows. It's in those quiet moments, when you resist the urge to speak, that you truly meet yourself. You hear the racing thoughts. You feel the pull of your pride, your fears, your insecurities. And you get to decide, do I follow them, or do I rise above them? Seneca believed that mastering yourself in private was the path to mastering yourself in public. Before you can stand calmly before a hostile crowd, you must learn to sit still with your own restless mind. Have you ever noticed how some of your clearest insights come when you're alone, undistracted, walking in nature, or lying awake at night? That's because wisdom needs silence to surface. Noise drowns it out. The Stoics would deliberately retreat into solitude, even if only for a few minutes, to examine their thoughts, review their day, and strengthen their character. Marcus Aurelius, in the middle of running an empire and leading armies, would write to himself at dawn or before sleep, sorting his mind through words never meant for anyone else's ears. This isn't weakness, it's preparation. It's the sharpening of the blade before the battle, because when the time comes to speak, to act, or to lead, the one who has practiced silence will stand stronger than those who never learned to wait. And here's the quiet irony. The more you practice silence, the less you'll feel the need to prove yourself. You'll realize that you don't owe the world a reaction, that not every opinion deserves an audience, and that your peace is too precious to be traded for cheap victories. People might mistake your quiet for weakness. Let them, because you'll know what they don't. That silence, when chosen, is a weapon sharper than any word. You'll become the one others look to when chaos rises. When tempers flare, when the world turns loud, not because you have the loudest voice, but because yours is the one worth waiting for. And that is the essence of Stoic strength. So, as you move through your day, notice how many moments invite you to react. A careless comment, a mistake by someone else, a delay, a rejection, a provocation. In those moments, remember this: you have a choice. You can be swept away by the noise, or you can be the calm center within it. The Stoics weren't born with unshakable calm. They built it. Slowly, deliberately, by choosing silence when it was easier to shout, by pausing when it was tempting to attack, by reflecting before rushing into judgment. You and I have those same opportunities every day. Not grand cinematic battles, but small, invisible victories. The kind that no one else may notice, but which quietly shape the person you're becoming. Ask yourself, what kind of strength do I want to carry? The brittle kind that cracks at the first insult, or the steady, enduring strength built on self-mastery? It starts here, with silence, with the discipline to let your emotions settle, like dust after a storm. Only then can you see clearly. Only then can you decide wisely. And the beauty is, you don't have to wait for a perfect moment to practice this. You can start now. The next time someone cuts you off in traffic, when a message online pushes your buttons, when a friend disappoints you, in those ordinary, forgettable moments lies your greatest training ground. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. And silence is your first, most reliable step toward that mastery. If this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of something you'd forgotten, carry it with you. Practice it. Watch how your world changes when you stop feeding the noise and start mastering the space between stimulus and response. And if you found value here, feel free to leave a thought in the comments, or better yet, choose to carry this wisdom quietly into your own life, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to say nothing at all. If you found wisdom in this message, and you value the kind of strength that grows quietly within, consider joining us here at Stoic Scrolls. Subscribe for more timeless lessons from the Stoics, reminders to stay steady, and reflections that help you master yourself in a noisy world. And until next time, stay calm, stay untouchable.